What if I told you that a coin worth 3 pence, a coin most people threw away without blinking, is now selling for hundreds of pounds? The 1960 and 1967 British 3 pence each carry their own extraordinary secret. And by the end of this video, you will never look at an old brass coin the same way again. And we are starting with the coin that opened this chapter, the 1960 British 3 pence. A coin that looks like it belongs in a forgotten tin. But trust me, what it is actually worth belongs in a museum. 1960, Britain was changing. The post-war grey was finally lifting. Music was getting louder. Streets were getting busier. And in the middle of all that energy and optimism, millions of small brass 12-sided coins were passing through British hands every single day. Nobody studied them. Nobody saved them carefully. Nobody imagined that 65 years later, people would be paying serious money to own one in good condition. But here we are, and the 1960 British 3 pence has a story that is far bigger than its tiny size suggests. Now, the very first thing you need to understand about this coin is what makes it immediately special. The portrait. By 1960, the young Queen Elizabeth II had been on British coins for nearly a decade. But the portrait used in this era, designed by Mary Gillick, is considered by collectors and historians alike to be one of the most elegant and beautifully executed royal portraits ever placed on British currency. Young, graceful, timeless. And now, with Queen Elizabeth gone forever, every coin carrying that portrait has become a permanent and irreplaceable piece of British history. Collectors do not just want this coin. They feel something when they hold it. But emotion alone does not drive value in the numismatic world. Rarity does. And the 1963 pence has rarity in places that most people never think to look. Here is the detail that separates casual coin holders from serious collectors. Not all 1963 pence coins are the same. This year produced coins for both circulation and for collector sets. The circulation strikes, the ones that entered everyday use, were minted in relatively modest numbers compared to peak production years. And after 65 years of being spent, lost, worn down, and forgotten, the ones that survived in genuinely good condition are becoming increasingly difficult to find. Difficult to find always means one thing: more valuable. Now let us talk about the varieties, because this is where the 1963 pence becomes genuinely fascinating. During this era, the Royal Mint used multiple working dies to produce coins, and subtle differences between those dies created distinct varieties that collectors now actively hunt. Differences in the font of the date. Differences in the spacing of the lettering. Differences in the depth and sharpness of the portcullis design on the reverse. To most people, these differences are completely invisible. But to a collector with a good eye and a quality loupe, they are everything. A confirmed scarce variety 1963 pence in fine condition commands a premium that a standard example simply cannot match. And when that variety comes in uncirculated condition, the price gap becomes genuinely shocking. But wait, because we have not even reached the most exciting part yet. Proof coins. In 1960, the Royal Mint produced a limited number of proof 3 pence coins for inclusion in special collector sets. These proof coins were struck with specially prepared dies on carefully selected planchets, producing coins with mirror-like fields and frosted raised details that look almost too perfect to be real. The contrast between the brilliant reflective background and the sharp frosted design is breathtaking in hand. And surviving examples in top condition are extraordinarily rare. A 1960 proof 3 pence in perfect condition has sold for prices that would make your eyes water. We are talking hundreds of pounds for a coin with a face value of 3 pence. And when these proof examples come in their original packaging, untouched, unhandled, exactly as they left the Royal Mint over 6 decades ago, the value climbs even higher. Now let us talk real numbers across the board. A heavily circulated 1963 pence in poor condition, maybe 1 to 3 pounds. Fine condition with clear details, 8 to 15 pounds. Extremely fine with sharp features and minimal wear, 25 to 50 pounds. An uncirculated brilliant example graded by a professional service, 100 to 200 pounds. And a certified proof specimen in perfect condition, 300 pounds and beyond at specialist coin auctions. 300 pounds for a 3 pence coin from 1960. And here is something that most people completely overlook when they think about the 1963 pence. This coin is now sitting right at the edge of that magical 65-year threshold. the point at which coins transition from being considered merely old to being considered genuinely antique. Collector demand at that threshold always spikes. Values always climb. And the window to acquire high-grade examples at reasonable prices is closing faster than most people realize. So what do you do right now? Check every old coin collection you have access to. Look for that distinctive 12-sided brass shape. Find the date, 1960. Then assess the condition carefully under good light. Are the portcullis details on the reverse sharp and clearly defined? Is the Queen's portrait crisp with no where on the highest points of her hair and features? Is there any original luster? That subtle golden shine that only survives on coins that were never circulated. Any one of those signs could mean you are holding something worth far more than 3 pence. And if the coin looks unusually sharp, unusually perfect, almost too good to have been in circulation at all, consider the possibility that you might be holding a proof. Because proof coins from 1960 do occasionally surface in old collections. And when they do, the lucky person who finds one never forgets the moment. 1960 was the year Britain started dreaming bigger. And this little brass coin, 12-sided, modest, almost forgettable, captured that moment of optimism and carried it silently through the decades. 65 years of history, sitting in the palm of your hand. The only question left is, do you have one? So now you know what the 1963 pence has been hiding for 65 years. But the 1967, the final 3 pence ever struck for circulation. That coin carries a weight that no other year in this entire series can match. 1967, Britain was electric. The Beatles were conquering the world. Color television was arriving in living rooms for the very first time. The country was alive with energy, change, and possibility. And quietly, almost invisibly, the Royal Mint was striking what would become the last ever British 3 pence coin intended for everyday circulation. Nobody announced it. Nobody made a fuss. Millions of these small brass 12-sided coins poured out of the mint and into British pockets, and the people spending them had absolutely no idea they were holding the end of an era. But that is exactly what the 1967 3 pence is. The end. The final chapter. And endings, in the world of coin collecting, are always worth something extraordinary. Now, before we go any further, I need to tell you something that most people do not know. And when you hear it, everything about this coin is going to look completely different. Britain had already decided. By 1967, the government had officially announced that decimalization was coming. The entire British currency system, the pounds, shillings, pennies, threepences, the whole beautiful, complicated structure that had existed for over 1,000 years, was going to be replaced. Wiped clean, modernized, and the deadline was set for February 1971, which means when the Royal Mint struck the 1967 3 pence, they knew. Every single person involved in producing that coin knew they were making the last one, and yet they struck millions of them, flooding the country with a coin that had less than 4 years left to live. Think about that for a moment. Millions produced, a known expiry date, and a public that was simultaneously spending them freely and quietly tucking them away as souvenirs of a dying monetary world. The result is a coin with a fascinating and almost contradictory collector profile. High surviving numbers, but an enormous and constantly growing demand driven by nostalgia, history, and the irreversible finality of what 1967 represents. And that demand, that deep emotional pull, is what keeps pushing the value of the finest examples higher and higher with every passing year. Now let us talk about what makes the 1967 3 pence so visually compelling. The obverse carries the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, but this is a slightly more mature portrait than the delicate Gillick design of the early 60s. By 1967, the Queen had been on the throne for 15 years. The portrait reflects that, more defined, more authoritative, and now carrying the added weight of being one of the final portraits ever used on a pre-decimal British coin. Every detail of that portrait is history frozen in copper and brass. The reverse carries the iconic portcullis design, the same strong, elegant symbol that appeared on 3 pence coins throughout the entire decimal run. A portcullis is a symbol of strength and fortification, a gate that holds firm against everything coming at it. And somehow, perhaps perfectly, that symbol ended up on the very last 3 pence ever made. A final gate, a final defense, before the old world gave way to the new. But now the numbers. Because this is where the 1967 3 pence genuinely surprises people. A heavily circulated example in poor condition, 1 to 2 pounds. Fine condition with decent detail, 5 to 12 pounds. Extremely fine with sharp features and clear portcullis lines, 20 to 40 pounds. An uncirculated brilliant example with original mint luster completely intact, 80 to 150 pounds. And a professionally certified gem uncirculated example graded MS65 or above, 200 to 300 pounds at specialist numismatic auctions. 300 pounds. For the last 3 pence Britain ever made. But here is the layer that most collectors completely miss when they think about the 1967 3 pence. The last strike issue. In addition to the standard circulation coins, the Royal Mint produced a small number of 1967 3 pence coins specifically for inclusion in the very last predecimal collector sets. These last issue set examples were struck with extra care. Better dies, more precise alignment, and they were never intended to circulate. Finding one of these set examples in its original packaging, untouched and perfect after nearly 60 years, is the kind of discovery that makes serious collectors reach immediately for their wallets. Original packaging examples in perfect condition have sold for prices well beyond standard uncirculated values. And when the provenance is documented, when you can prove exactly where that coin came from and that it has never been touched since leaving the Royal Mint, the premium becomes extraordinary. Now there is one more thing about the 1967 3 pence that gives it a value no price guide can fully capture. Queen Elizabeth II passed away in September 2022. Every coin carrying her portrait is now a historical artifact that can never be recreated. The specific portrait used on the 1967 3 pence, seen on one of the very last predecimal coins ever struck, represents a unique intersection of royal history and monetary history that exists nowhere else in British numismatics. Collectors who understand that intersection are willing to pay serious premiums to own it. And those premiums are only going to grow. So here is exactly what you need to do right now. Search every old coin collection you can find. Every biscuit tin. Every forgotten drawer. Every envelope tucked into the back of an old cabinet. Look for that distinctive 12-sided brass shape. Find 1967 on the date. Then examine the condition carefully. Are the portcullis details razor sharp? Is the Queen's portrait clean with no wear on the highest points? Is there any original golden luster still visible on the surfaces? Does the coin look like it has ever been spent, or does it look like it went straight from the mint into someone's careful hands? Because a 1967 3 pence that went straight from the mint into careful hands, and stayed there for nearly 60 years, is exactly the kind of coin that changes an ordinary afternoon into an extraordinary one. 1960 showed us a Britain full of hope and optimism, and 1967 to 1967 gave us the last goodbye of an entire monetary era. A system that had served Britain for over 1,000 years gone, replaced, never coming back. And this small brass coin, 12-sided, modest, almost forgettable, was the very last thing that system ever made. History does not get more final than that. 2 coins, 2 decades. One story that proves the smallest things from the past always carry the greatest weight in the future.